Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Tales from the Fandom. I have a special guest today coming back. Over 3 years ago is when we talked the first time, and I'm happy to have Mayanna Berrin back on the podcast to talk about what has been going on over 3 years ago. Mayanna, went back when we recorded first. You were living in Orlando, working at Think Geek, and then you moved to LA. And now here we are 3 years later. And I guess I have to ask, you're still in LA, right?
I sure am. Yeah, I'm still in LA. I lived in Van Nuys for a while, and then I moved to Hollywood in April of this year. Or last year, rather. Oh my God, last year.
Hollywood.
Yep.
Hollywood.
Straight up Los Angeles, right near Hollywood Boulevard and like the Walk of Fame and all that.
I gotta ask because I haven't lived in California in like a bajillion years, and I didn't ever live there. I lived in like Riverside when I was 8, maybe. Traffic, is it as bad as it's portrayed on like the TV and the movies?
It is as bad as they say. Depending on where you're commuting to for work, it's worse. When I was I worked at Riot Games for a while, and I was living in the Valley, and so my commute varied from like an hour to an hour and a half.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because they're in Santa Monica, which is like near the beach.
Yeah.
So, it's tough. It's tough driving. Basically, like the strategy that I tell people is if you don't need to be anywhere between the hours of 8 and 10 and the hours of like 5 and 7, don't try to be anywhere.
That is, it's just incredible to just I can't imagine doing that. I did it in New York for a couple months where it was just the hour commute each way, but at least I was on a bus or a subway train and I could read or listen to music. I don't know.
Public transport. Yeah, I definitely thought about transitioning over from driving to like trains or buses so that I could at least do something with the time.
Mm-hmm.
Public transport in LA is weirdly inefficient and unpredictable. Like the train system, it's there, but like I tested it out one night commuting from Santa Monica back to Hollywood, and it took me like almost 3 hours to get home.
Holy cow.
Between like because I had to switch a couple different lines, and I had to take like one line all the way down. Yeah, it was not feasible, and it was nice because at least I didn't have to focus on driving. But yeah, I don't know, there's no really good solution out here except to live near where you work, which is hard to deal with out here, and housing out here is very complicated as well.
I can't even imagine. And we tell our friends all the time when they're thinking about moving to Orlando, the key to living in Orlando is live where you work, essentially.
Yeah, true.
And that's only, dealing with I-4 or some of the toll roads. It's not anything like Los Angeles area.
Yeah, it's Orlando. It's the distance is the distance. Like that, things are just really far away from each other. But in LA, everything's close to each other, but it takes so long to get around to just get to the thing you're trying to get to. That, yeah, it's rough.
Yeah. Now you were back on episode 47, so you were in my second year of doing the podcast, and we're getting ready for the 4th year anniversary this year.
Amazing.
We talked about a few fandoms, and one of the ones that we talked about originally was Steven Universe. Yeah. And I actually last year got into Steven Universe, except for the most recent or last season, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is it now? Steven Universe Forever, or like Steven Universe
Future, I think.
Future, yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't watched the movie because I haven't watched the last season because Cartoon Network makes it so very difficult for me to watch on streaming for some reason. Mm-hmm. Like I burned through them on Hulu, and then I was like, oh, I'm done. But Cartoon Network, you don't have a great streaming browser for me to watch.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I guess paying for it on YouTube, but that's so, that's not great. It was on Hulu for the longest time, I think. But I don't think the most recent seasons. I watched it through very roundabout methods of like finding just episodes where I could online, and yeah, probably not in the most. This is a little ethically questionable. But I did TiVo it, I think, too, when I had cable in my parents' house.
Right, exactly.
It's
So
hard.
are you still into Steven Universe
I
now, or is
am.
it okay?
Yeah, it's, I don't get a chance to watch it as much as I want to, but I still follow, the updates, and I follow a couple fan accounts, and I'm up to speed on the lore. It's gotten really crazy.
I've heard something about the movie, and I've heard about like Steven Universe future of
Yeah.
it's nice that they're having a season or however long it's going to last of well everything's done, so I guess it's a positive outcome, and you get to see everybody just reacting to being done with like the major drama and seeing where they are and what's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah. It's interesting to see a show, like, talk about what happens after the final battle. That's been sort of the big talking point about that they would do, not necessarily a spin-off. I guess it's not a spin-off, but
Hmm.
like a time jump, and then to keep it canonical rather than just like, kinda like Rugrats All Grown Up, where that was supposed to be just kind of like a one-off thing, and then they made a whole spin-off show about it, which I liked that very much, actually.
Yeah, I remember when that came out, and it was like, okay, like I dig it because I think that's one of the things that's missing from certain shows
Mhm.
is having that breath of okay, we've seen the characters go through what they've gone through. Let's see
Mhm.
them just afterwards and see
Yeah.
how they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely, and grow and develop and change. Like, I think, you see it more in anime where characters go through something, and then that thing they went through impacts them in later episodes. And I think in a lot of former Western animation, not so much now, I think it's changing a bit, but, the status quo would always have to be retained by the end of the episode. So
Exactly.
everything goes back to, like, the end is the beginning, which is something that they talk a lot about in, like, sketch comedy, where, yeah, it's like you went through a thing, but everything's back to normal at the end. And Steven Universe, I mean, because it was so heavily influenced by anime and Eastern storytelling, because Rebecca Sugar's like really into anime and Zelda and all that, I think, she wasn't necessarily the trendsetter in that regard, but she definitely was one of the bigger creators who, took her universe and its internal logic very seriously, and like and respected it to a degree in the storytelling that I think we hadn't really seen in a lot of other cartoons at that time.
hmm it's definitely something, and I have to say, like I heard so many people talk about Steven Universe before you, and I think you may have been one of the first people that talked about it on the podcast.
Yes. Mhm.
And like I went into it with very low expectations. The episodes were short,
Mhm.
but I liked it. I liked that they were short. I liked that they told such a succinct story,
Mhm.
and I fell in love with so many of the
Who's
characters.
your favorite gem?
Oh gosh, my favorite Gen. I really love Garnet.
Oh, yeah, Garnet's great.
Garnet's my favorite, but I really love Stevoni
Oh,
I guess I don't know how
Stevonnie's
to pronounce
great.
it. Stevani?
Yeah, because it's Steven and Connie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Stevonnie as well. I thought the song, oh my god, what's it called? Just a Thought, I think it is, or yeah, it's one of the probably one of my favorite moments in animation, like, period.
Oh man. So I'm happy that the show is still around. I've got
Yeah.
to catch up on it. I'm
Yeah.
glad that you're still into it.
Mhm.
Another thing that we talked about was Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
You still into that?
Love Zelda. I It's so funny. So I finally did get a chance to play Breath of the Wild, and my brother is also really big into Zelda. And I think I'm in the camp. I'm have like a hot take, which is like, I liked Breath of the Wild, but I felt like it was such a departure from all of the things that make Zelda the franchise that people love, that I had a hard time like seeing it as a Zelda game, if that makes any
hmm
sense.
It does because I've read a number of people talking about how it's just it's such a shift away from what people have known and played,
Mhm.
where it's like you're doing things that you're not used to doing in
Yeah.
Zelda, and they I think that was a big thing about it was you're just in such a different environment, a different story, and different play mechanics, and
Mhm. Oh my god, so much. Yeah, the physics as well, like, that really threw me for a loop was that they really went in on a physics engine for that game, and some of the puzzles are dependent on, like, momentum and timing for things, and it's just so not what I liked about like, if I wanna play Portal, I'll play Portal, you know?
I
But
gotcha.
yeah, it was like that, and then I liked the voice acting, I thought that that was great, and I liked the story and that everything was sort of this, like, "What the hell happened here?" kind of a vibe, but
Mhm.
I don't know, yeah, I haven't beaten it, I know I pretty much know the ending just from osmosis and being on social media, but, and I like the Zelda, I really like this interpretation of Zelda, I think she's really fun and like compelling and three-dimensional and quirky and a person like really a fleshed out character, but I don't know, I'm excited for the sequel. I think that it's interesting to see like such a direct sequel to a Zelda game. Like you've had spiritual successors before, but you've never had a straight up, well, I guess Zelda 2, but we don't talk about that one for obvious reasons because it was so weird.
I have a Switch,
Mm. Oh
and
yeah.
I keep telling people, I really want to play Zelda. I've never really played a Zelda game before. It just has never been my thing. And I joke about it because on occasion I'll stream on Twitch, like
Sure.
whatever I'm doing. And I'm like, man, I'd really love to just play Zelda and like mess around, but I'd never do anything. I would
Right.
just like wander around aimlessly, die, jump off of things, die. Like there'd be no like I watch people play it on Twitch and I'm like, there is no way I'd be able to solve those puzzles.
Mm. Yeah, the way that the game what I liked about the dungeons, in all the previous Zelda games, like, specifically, I really like the dungeons in Wind Waker. I like that they build off of a thing you learn, and then the thing you learn becomes sort of the driving mechanic to get through the rest of the dungeon, and then you get a tool that helps you further, like, cement the thing you learned. And I felt like the puzzles, because they were, like, these small, like, temples, it's almost like a mini game, and I just don't like that mechanic as much.
Mhm.
I don't know. Again, it's a beautiful game. It was a huge success for Nintendo. I completely understand everybody who loves it. I don't think I can get into it for the same reason I have a hard time getting into Skyrim.
Okay.
Like, I really like Skyrim, and it's fun to wander around, but I feel like it's almost too much choice, if that makes any sense at all.
It does because I've played very limited amounts of Skyrim at this point. The first time I played, I died at the beginning of the game, and so I stopped. I stopped for a while. I was like, okay, I can't make it past the dragon breathing fire on stuff. I'm going to give it a break,
For sure.
and then I made it as far as like the first cabin that you get to, and I'm trying to get to some town,
Right.
and these people start jumping out of the forest and start shooting me with
Oh,
arrows, and I die
yeah.
again. I'm like, okay, that's like I want to get to the point where I can wander around and just fart around and do whatever.
Yeah.
But dang,
The
I
early
just
game
keep
ones
dying.
are pretty tough, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. But you and I have followed each other on Facebook for a while
Mhm.
since almost since the recording, I
Yeah.
think, for the 3 years.
Mhm.
And you told me you have new fandoms that you're
I
into.
do have new fandoms. So one of my big new fandoms is Detroit Become Human, which is a game by Quantic Dream. Have you heard of it?
I've seen a few people play. I
Mhm.
enjoy watching after you play through a certain part, like all the different path things that you either hit or
Yeah,
missed.
the flow chart. Yeah,
That's a very interesting feature of, wow, I really want to go back and see what happens after that.
yeah. I've played through the game to completion. I think 3 times. It's about a 10-hour to 12-hour story, depending on like how quickly you can deal with all that stuff. I don't know. But I really, really like the story. I really like all the characters. I do wish that Kara had more playable levels as the other two male characters. Like I
Hmm.
started to see some breakdowns online, that she just has less levels in the game than Connor and Marcus do. And that was kind of a bummer because I really liked Kara as a character. Like, do you know a little bit about the production or the history behind that game?
I don't. The only thing I know is that it was made, I believe, by the same people that did Heavy Rain.
Yes.
which I watched. I watched my brother-in-law do a playthrough of that on occasion.
Heavy Rain is bananas. I played through it finally last year, but I'd watched people play through it because I was a little too young. It was like rated M, and I think I was like 14 when it came out. But I did sneak like YouTube because I was just really fascinated with a video game that had like very not like low stakes because it's a very high stakes situation, but it wasn't like swords and guns and all this stuff. It was like a mystery. I love mysteries. I really love LA Noire too for the same reason. But there was so that company Quantic Dream did this tech demo, I think for PSX 2016, maybe it was 2015, and it was just a little cinematic short called Kara, and it was about Kara being built and then being distributed into the world. And during her like final status checks, like her functionality checks, the guy who's assessing her realizes that she might be sentient.
Oh
And he
wow!
tries to tear her apart, and then she like begs him to stop, and then he ships her anyway, knowing that she's self-aware. And it was like probably like a 7-minute short. It was really just to demonstrate the capacity for facial animation and how much it had developed on the PlayStation 3 and all the cool new engines that were coming out. But the short was so riveting. Like, and they had the same actress Valerie Curry who plays her in the final game, who had done the short, and it's just like such a great little story. And I was just like completely obsessed with it. I watched the short, I don't know, I'm like at least 12 times. And I was in acting school at the time too. So it was like I was just like, damn, like this might be the future. Like we might have to start paying attention to performances of this nature. And that is exactly what happened. I mean, like motion capture in The Last of Us, and it's definitely developing into this way to really capture very, very compelling and nuanced performances for video games. And so when the game was announced, I actually missed it, but then like a month before it came out, a coworker of mine mentioned that this game was coming out, and I saw some of like the box art, and then I saw Kara, and I was like, wait, this cannot. They didn't actually do it. And then I got so excited.
They didn't actually do it, but they did.
They did the thing. I was so, dude, I had like so many different theories in my head of like, oh my God, if they made that game, what kind of game would it be? Would it be like a stealth game? Would it be like LA Noire where you have to like kind of blend into society and like not give away that you're a thing and like have to deal with facial animation and like all that stuff? It's a very straightforward. I mean, it's a narrative driven game with choices. Like it's a branching narrative pathways game. With 3 playable characters, and I have a very dumb story, which is the actor who plays Connor. He lives in LA, and he's a headshot photographer, and he took my headshots for me.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I saw him in the game, and then I did some research on him because I thought he was just a really cool actor, and then I found out that he did headshots, so I reached out to him.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it was wild.
I can't believe the game. You brought it up. I can't believe the game is that short for everything that it seems like is involved with it.
Well, the replay, I think if you want to play through it and get, I don't know, multiple endings, you could probably sink at least 60 hours into that thing if you were trying to complete every single different way that the game could end. I think each character, I think in total there's like 18 endings. I think there's like a couple different critical points for each character that would change the way that their ending would like drastically. But yeah, a lot of people play it through multiple times. I know I did.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I could see the story itself, though, it takes probably about 10 to 12 hours for one regular playthrough.
Awesome. I know that it was one of the free games that PlayStation had on their PS Plus program, so I downloaded it, and I've got it sitting there, but, it's tough to find time to do anything.
I get it. I will say that if you have a weekend, it is you can really knock it out. It's and the way that they structure the levels, like there's really good sort of structured stopping points where there will be a couple like key things that happen and then maybe a cooldown level, and you're like, all right, I think that's a good place to stop for tonight.
Okay.
I will say that I think this story is it's insane. It's a lot of people feel like it's a little schlocky. It's French, you know, it's very dramatic. But I think that if you liked Heavy Rain or at least intrigued by the way that they told their story, I think that it is worth at least playing through. I always just say play through the first level of Detroit. It's called The Hostage, and it's an android trying to negotiate with another android to release a human hostage. And it is a very compelling argument to play the rest of the game.
I will have to check it out. It's one of those. I've always said this on so many different episodes. I can't do first person shooters. I can't
Oh,
do like the action adventure games like Kingdom Hearts.
mm,
I just I can't do like the number of button combinations that people want me to do when they're playing the game. Like I need to go slow. I need to be able to make my decisions
mm,
and go from there. And I've seen it played, and I'm like, I think I could do it. And I really I like more narrative stories now,
yeah.
or where it's not. I don't want to say it's not like that you don't have choices, but I like that you can just be like, okay, I'm choosing this path. Let's go down this path and
Yeah.
go from
It's like character driven rather than plot driven necessarily. It's like, you know, the world itself is really interesting, but you care about the people and what they're dealing with rather than like, we got to save the world from big alien monster, you know, whatever it
there.
is.
You don't need the high stakes drama.
Yeah, it's high stakes in its own way. Like one of the things that I deal with a lot now in acting and the improv that I still do is I'm studying what's called narrative long form improv, which is improv for the purpose of telling a 2 hour, like an hour and a half long original play. So you're improvising a whole play essentially with characters that stay the same throughout, and you try to get to the end. And one of the things that I've been learning within that is the easiest way to get people to care about a narrative is to just make the characters really real and rich and compelling. The story could be very small stakes. It doesn't need to be like spy espionage or like crazy political intrigue. Like if you just make compelling characters that people care about, it doesn't really matter what the rest is. They People just have this attachment emotionally and want to see that arc complete itself.
Hmm.
So I think Detroit is a really good game if you vibe with that kind of that storytelling. I think it would be a recommendation that I would give you. I would have in the past recommended like The Walking Dead, like the Telltale game, but now that Telltale as a studio kind of did some not great stuff, I can't in good faith recommend it. But I think choose your own adventure games are I think it would be a good genre for you.
Yeah, I do have the Telltale Walking Dead and Game of Thrones games.
Mm.
I got pretty far into the first Walking Dead one, and then they were very mean to me and killed me, and I was like, okay, yep,
Ooh,
I'm done again.
yeah, that one was tough. I really love the first Telltale Walking Dead game. I thought the ending was just so powerful. Have you seen it at all? The ending?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I won't spoil it. It's so sad because I love that game so much, but because of the way that Telltale dealt with their bankruptcy and not giving their employees their severance and all of that, I have a really hard time revisiting those games now.
Yeah, it that's I mean, there's so many different video game companies with so many different things that are going on,
Yeah,
but I still can't imagine. I remember reading a story after like they had gotten, they shut down, and then they had a company come in, I guess, to finish the last game, the last Walking Dead game,
with
and and
Skydance.
and I think they were working in the same office, on the
Mm,
same computers, on the same floor of what they had been located in. I could not imagine, having to go through that.
yeah, yeah. Well, the thing is, like, so I worked as a contractor for a long time at Riot, and the thing that really hit home for me with with the Telltale stuff was contracted employees at Telltale couldn't even claim that they were employed by Telltale when they filed for unemployment because they weren't technically employees at the company. And I think that was just a really unfortunate. Uh, I just think that all of it was handled very, very badly.
Oh my goodness, that is terrible.
Yeah, it was a rough time.
All right, so Detroit Become Human, or
Mhm.
is it Becoming Human? Become
It's
Human?
Detroit Become Human.
Become Human
Yeah,
is one of your new fandoms. Highly recommended.
highly recommend it.
What else you got for me? What
Oh,
else you
man,
into?
have you heard of Untitled Goose Game?
I follow you on social media, so therefore I know what Untitled Goose Game is. You may be the number one cheerleader of the people that I follow about Untitled Goose Game.
Yes.
I know it. I don't own it. I haven't played it,
Mhm.
but I definitely know all about it from you.
It's so fun. I really appreciate it's funny, so I have a couple friends now who are really into indie games, and, I've started to appreciate sort of like the smaller studios and these smaller stories and more interesting, like, visual styles for gaming, and the Goose Game, I just think, like or the Untitled Goose Game is, I just think it's so lovely. Like, it's like a beautiful, self-contained almost like a gourmet little pastry, like a little petit four or something. Like, it's 4 hours long, but it was made by 4 dudes, but it's so tight in its execution, and there's so many little things about the map, the sound design, like, when the goose's feet patter on pavement versus pattering on grass, it's a different sound.
Hmm.
Like, when it honks into, like, a bottle, it's muffled. At different points, sounds will reverb off of caves or, like, wells. The AI for the townspeople's really nuanced and cute. I just think, like, I really appreciate a game that does what it does to the best of its ability and is just so sweet and charming and uncomplicated and like anybody can pick it up and like yeah it's hard like it's a challenging puzzle game like it some of the things you have to do you're like man that was really tricky but it's very accessible and I like that I really like games that don't make you feel stupid or make you feel like you can't play them because there's such a stiff like learning curve to be good or competent at it.
Oh my gosh, yes. Please give me games that are super easy to get into, or at least teach me what I need to do before you throw me in the deep end.
Exactly. I mean, well, especially on the Switch, there's a lot of really good ports of like even indie iPhone games on the Switch. Like Donut County is another fun one that I played with a friend, which is again also very short, and it's basically just there's a hole, and when it eats something, it gets bigger, and so you're trying to figure out how to get everything on the map inside this hole and using just different parts of the environment to grow the whole and stuff. It's very like meditative and simple, but it's a really fun, sweet, nice time.
How did you come across the Untitled Goose Game because it was like the thing on the internet like that everyone was talking about, or did you like come across it earlier than that?
I think I'd sort of heard about it when it was announced, and then I saw all the memes, and I didn't really. I was like, okay, there's a goose, and the goose is having a time, but I don't really know anything else about this game. And then a friend of mine wanted to play it with me, so we downloaded it on my Switch, and we knocked it out in like one day. We would just do pass the controller, and it was just so fun and funny. I'm one of these people again, I love Portal and I just don't see a lot of comedy done really, really well in video games. And like as somebody who does comedy in her personal life, like I really appreciate when a game can genuinely make me like smile or laugh.
Hmm.
And so that when I started to realize just that aspect of it as well, I really started to kind of imprint very strongly on the game.
So a 4-hour game, that sounds like a doable game for me.
Very doable. Great with the kids. I think it would be it's a fun teamwork game. It's a little tricky at points just because there's like the goose honks and like at one point you have to use like walkie talkies and like place them at different places and like honk into one and do stuff. But overall, like not super difficult to get into. I would highly recommend it. I think it's a really fun game.
It's definitely been fun to like watch you do all the goose stuff on like on Instagram or Instagram
Yep.
stories, on Facebook. It's like it's just there it is. There's Mayanna being Goose.
It's Goose. It's a good time. It's such a simple, sweet thing. Like I like it. I think in the same ways that I like Animal Crossing.
Oh gosh, there's something that I'm waiting for in March.
So excited. It's been so
I
long.
cannot wait.
Yeah, it's a good time, and yeah, I just really appreciate what Nintendo's doing right now. I think that I was a little underwhelmed with Pokemon Sun or not Sun and Moon, Sword and Shield. I found it to be a little bit like, all right, it's a little too accessible. I think they're definitely aging the game down. I think they're trying
Hmm.
to get more younger kids into it, so it's a little like uncomplicated. But overall, I think they're really leaning into their strong IPs right now in a really smart way and leaning into like I think they kind of know that the audience that really loves Animal Crossing has sort of grown with these games over time, and they're really building on that and acknowledging the things that I think people have been wanting for the game for a long time. So I'm really excited to see what happens in March.
Yeah, we're getting back from our trip on the day that it releases,
Oh
and
wow.
I haven't decided if I'm going to get the actual like digital, or if I'm going to go to the store and pick up like the actual cartridge.
Mm,
I'll probably get the actual cartridge, but I don't care what time we get home. I need it that day. I've got to play it. I
yeah.
got to start my island,
Yes.
and I already told my kids because we're not getting another Switch, so they're going to have to be stuck on my island, and I already have laid down the law of you better not mess it up.
Yeah, it's interesting that they, really put the hammer down on the save files. Um,
Yeah, that is it. That's the one thing where I was reading even a report where like it's going to be tied to the Switch, and until they get their cloud thing built just for Animal Crossing, if your Switch dies, your island goes with it.
Whoa. Oh
Yeah.
boy. Oh, wow. That's heavy. I mean, I guess, I'm sure that once they get the network aspect up, it'll protect it a little bit. But yowza. I think it's kind of good though to have only one island per like file because when I played it with my siblings, although I think we did share a town, it starts to get a little muddy when you've got a bunch of people with different save files on one game, I guess.
Hmm.
That is very
I think
interesting.
I think the one thing that people are frustrated with is that you can't like have multiple cartridges and switch them out. Like
Yeah.
that's the thing, and it's I don't know, but I'm excited. I'm ready to see more. I'm sure I'm keep crossing my fingers for like an Animal Crossing direct
Oh
to
yeah.
kind of go into it more because there's still just so many unanswered questions that I want
Mhm.
answered.
Yeah. I wonder if they'll just kind of wait it out because yeah, we're about a month away from the release. They might. I wouldn't be surprised. I could see them taking it either way.
We'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see.
What
But
are your thoughts on the Animal Crossing, designed Switch that they just did?
oh my gosh, I fell in love with it. However, I also know that like currently my Switch mostly stays it doesn't move.
Right.
And they did say that they were going to sell the Joy Cons and the dock.
Oh, that's
They
cool.
were going to sell those separately.
That's smart.
But again, I mean, my Switch doesn't really move.
Mm,
It just stays stationary. But I love the color scheme of it. I
mm,
love the look of it, and I'm like, man, it's just so pretty to look at. But I
that's
can't
gorgeous.
spend $300 on another Switch.
Yeah, that I'm like, I wonder when I'm really big on Etsy because of like Detroit and Goose Game didn't really have really strong merch presences, so I would go to Etsy to try and find cool stuff, and I wonder what the decal lifestyle is going to be like once Animal Crossing comes out because I feel like there's probably going to be some really cool independent artists doing their interpretations, and you might be able to just get away with getting a really nice sticker.
Yeah, probably something like that. I mean, well, I don't know. We'll see. I do like I saw someone had posted that they're releasing some new Animal Crossing figures in Japan, and I'm like, "Oh man, I'd really love those because when I lived in Japan, they had little Animal Crossing plushies that
Yeah.
I picked up way back in like 2004,
Mhm.
2005. and I have them somewhere in the garage in a storage bin,
Mhm.
never seeing the light of day at this point, but I do love them.
The figurines for Animal Crossing for the longest time were really hard to get, and then the Switch, or not the Switch, the Amiibo kinda made it, like, a little bit better, and then the plushies came back. I mean, it's just such a merchandisable game, but I think because it was a smaller IP for the longest time, I think they shied away from really going ham with the merchandising for it, and now I think I'm excited to see what Nintendo does because I think they're finally aware that, like, a lot of people with expendable income would wanna buy Animal Crossing stuff. So I'm starting to see those cracks start to slip through, and I'm stoked for it. I mean, I have the Isabelle Nendoroid, I have the summer version and the winter version. I really want them to make a KK slider Nendoroid as well. I think that would be really cute.
I could totally see, like, Animal Crossing is the equivalent of like Pokemon, where you could make all of the things because
All the
everyone has
villagers,
their
yeah.
favorite villager, and I mean, I love my certain villagers. Like, there's somebody on Twitter talking about, well, everyone talk about who's your favorite villager, and I remember mine from GameCube, and she's still my favorite. And dang, if I didn't load up Pocket Camp yesterday and give that favorite villager like the heart present,
Oh my
just to be
god,
like,
who's your favorite villager?
I love Maple the
Maple.
bear.
Yeah. Oh gosh, there was a panda that I had in my first town on the GameCube that was really grumpy, and I liked him very much, and I would always send him letters to try and get him to like me.
That game was the only reason I bought a GameCube, was for Animal Crossing.
Really? Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, that was my jam back in college.
Nice. Did you play Wind Waker then on there as well, or no?
No, I've never played any Zelda game.
Oh my
I
god,
keep
that's right.
I played the original Zelda on the Nintendo,
Mm,
and it was not for me, and that's really been it. Like, that was my one attempt at Zelda.
really?
I've never played Majora's Mask or Ocarina or Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, none of them.
I'm gonna be that hot take person, like, Majora's Mask is very, very good, but when people say it's, like, the best Zelda game, I'm like, I don't know about that." But yeah, no, I mean, I love that you bought a GameCube just for, Animal Crossing. One of my friends was saying he was just gonna buy the Switch just for Fire Emblem Three Houses, and I think I respect that a great deal.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that.
Fire Emblem Three Houses I'm trying to get into, but, I don't know what you know of it, but it's you could play the game 3 times and get, like, 3 very distinct different endings. Um, and there's, like, a 5-year time jump that happens in the middle, and, I just started playing it, and I really like it, but it's so hard to that for some reason, I feel like I have to really sit down and be very, deliberate in playing that game, and I just haven't had the bandwidth to do that recently.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I've been watching a few of my Twitch streamer people that I follow play through the game, and I love the concept of it,
Yeah.
but I like, again, I don't have time for 1 playthrough, let alone 3,
Yeah.
and it feels like I could sink, like, hours upon hours upon hours upon hours into that game,
Mhm.
but yeah, I've been enjoying watching people play, and thank God for Twitch. Like,
Yeah.
back a couple years ago, I used to be like, "Eh, why would I wanna watch people play a game?" Well,
Hmm.
guess what? Me, I don't have time to play a game. I work from home, so I can sit and watch people, or at least listen and kinda, like, casually watch
Yeah.
while people play games, and then I don't have to play them or invest the money
Yeah.
or anything.
Yeah,
That
I think that that definitely was the appeal. I think it also became a really great try before you buy mechanism for a lot of people where they would want to see their favorite streamers or their favorite, like, YouTube Let's Play people, play through part of it to see if they wanted to invest in the time and money to play it themselves.
Oh, heck yeah. I mean, I the one game that springs to mind on that is the new, Star Wars, like, Fallen
Yeah.
Order, and I heard people talk about it before. I watched people play it, and then they were equating it to, like, Dark Souls, and
Oh,
I know
no.
a lot about Dark Souls,
Yeah.
of how difficult that game
Yeah.
is, and they said that the Star Wars game is built very similar to it, and another game I can watch.
Yeah, that's I'm definitely in that camp, and I know it's probably not a very popular opinion. I don't like playing games just because they're hard.
Mhm.
Like, that is not a good selling point for me. I had friends in college who were really into Dark Souls and, just the brutality aspect of, like, it's just so unrelenting, and I tried to play through the first part of it, and, I mean, I got it, like, it was fun, but I don't I'd rather play a game again, like, I very much like games like Detroit for this reason, like, I'd rather play a game with a really interesting story and interesting characters, and maybe it's not the most, like, complex gameplay design-wise, but that's what makes me happy, so,
Exactly.
yeah.
Now, I did wanna talk because we've talked about fandoms,
Mhm.
but I wanna talk about what you're doing in Los Angeles because
Hey.
you left Orlando and
Yeah.
you're like, "Peace out, I'm gone. I'm going to the other side of the country."
Mhm.
So, what took you to Los Angeles? Well, not, Los Angeles first, but what took you there?
Well, I my plan was always to move to either New York or Los Angeles after I graduated college. I don't know if we got into it too much on the last episode, but so I got my BFA in theater at the University of Miami, and so I always wanted to move to one of those cities to pursue a career in entertainment. And I checked out New York because I'm originally from New York. And when I was in the city, I just didn't really feel like that was the right like vibe for me anymore. And then when I went out to LA for this thing called Senior Showcase, which is where you present some scenes that you've prepared to agencies to see if they want to assign you or have meetings with you, things like that. I really, really liked LA as a city, and I liked the accessibility aspect. I liked the weather aspect, and I just thought that it would be the place that would make the most sense for the things that I'm trying to do in my career overall. So when I was working at ThinkGeek, even then I was pretty transparent with them. I was like, hey, I think probably around January I'm going to be moving to LA, but I'm trying to save some money and I want to work. So they had me working there, and I really enjoyed working for ThinkGeek. And I think if I had stayed in Orlando, I would probably have stayed there for a significant chunk of time because I really really liked my team.
Mhm.
But yeah, so then I moved out here, and man, it's wild. Anybody who's thinking about moving to LA, you can't give it less than a year and a half. Like you need a year just to figure out what's going on, and that's really hard
Mhm.
for people. A lot of the people that I moved out here with or around the same time all moved back probably within about a year time span, and I didn't even really feel like I had a network here until like the end of my second year in LA. It just takes a lot of time and patience and unfortunately, like, money and resources that are not necessarily realistic for everybody. Like, I was working I was working at one point, I think, like, 4 jobs. Uh,
That is
yeah,
that is a lot.
yeah, it was a lot, and, you just hustle, and then something will happen, like, something will like, a relationship that you've developed will, present itself as an opportunity, or your experience will open doors for you that were previously closed, but it just takes a lot of time. So, yeah, I've been out here now. I was doing school. I was doing like studying comedy at Second City, and I've taken classes at UCB and this studio called Impro, which is for narrative long form. I haven't done Groundlings yet. Groundlings is a really big school for character work, like comedy characters, like Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy. Both
Mhm.
studied at Groundlings, so that is in my plan at some point to study there as well. But yeah, I write. I do voice acting. I just signed recently with a talent manager, so I'm just doing the thing. It's so hard to explain the progress markers for entertainment because they really are quite nebulous. And you just gotta have to be patient. It's just a process, you know?
Yeah, it's been like, uh like I had mentioned, following you on Facebook
Mhm,
or Instagram, and I'd see you get like a TV job of like a producer background, like assistant type job, and
mhm,
then you got something else and something else. I'm like, oh, okay, so you're going like in that entertainmenty type, like producer type direction. Then I'm like,
mhm,
oh wow, you're like doing comedy stuff now, and
mhm,
like it blew my mind because I didn't realize like that was what you had been into or training for, and I was like, wow, like I couldn't believe it.
Aw. Yeah, I guess I didn't really talk too much about comedy, when I worked at ThinkGeek. I think it didn't really come up most of the time you're talking about IPs. But yeah, I've been doing improv since I was 16. I actually studied at SAC Improv Lab in Orlando. I don't know if you ever see shows over there, but they do shows, I think 4 or 5 times a week, maybe 7 nights a week. But yeah, like I've been into comedy for a really long time, and it's interesting. So like I work in production, and I worked as a coordinator, and I still do work as a coordinator. But then at night I write for little shows in town, and I get to perform to whatever level I can. At different comedy theaters that will have me. Like I perform a lot at Second City, and then I also perform at the Pack, which is a kind of like an interesting, very punk rock vibe theater. And they do a show once a month called Super Dating Simulator that I really love doing, which is kind of a weird combo between comedy, and then it's also an anime dating sim live on stage.
Hmm.
So the audience is like the controller, and they decide what they want to see the protagonist do, and then the actors sort of act that out. And then it changes the ending at the end, and you can get like a grade, and you can get like a good ending or a bad ending. And that is, it's like the joy of my life.
That's the one where you have like whenever you post about it, I'm like, dang, like that's the show I want to watch. Like, is it just seems so different from what I'm expecting from like a comedy show.
Oh, absolutely. It's bananas. It's a crazy, crazy show, and I love it so much. This most recent one was like Persona 5 or like Lupin the Third, like heist themed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I played the heiress. I was like the Mark.
Oh my goodness. So I guess the the follow up question that one would have is like, what is your goal? What is
Mm.
your end game of comedy? Is it writing, TV, movie, comedy special,
Oh man, that's such a hard
everything?
question. Yeah, kinda everything. Like, as crazy as that sounds, I my manager is a former stand-up comedian, and so he's been encouraging me to go out and develop that as my next sort of stand-up is like the last bastion of stuff I've never touched. But it's something that I've always had an affinity for stand-up, and I think I'm just a little nervous because it's like that you're on your own kind of a thing, and
Mhm.
it lives and dies with you. But even in doing my duo sketch show with my friend Ian called Weird, the amount of accountability, just leaving it on 2 people, like you're responsible for half of the content in a show, and hoping it's funny. And to make I would say overall Weird was a very successful sketch show. Did every sketch land? No, but I think we had a lot more wins than I thought we thought we had. We weren't sure if it was funny anymore because we were working on it for 6 months in a vacuum. We were like, "Is this funny?" And then sometimes we'd read lines and we'd laugh like, "Alright, I think it's still funny. It'll be okay."
Oh
But
my
yeah,
goodness.
so yeah, stand-up TV, I'm writing a feature, I'm helping develop I don't know if it's gonna be a 30 or an hour comedy sitcom, and then maybe a web series as well. Like, it's so hard to say because there's so many ideas and there's so many stories that I wanna tell. It's hard for me to just rest in one camp. And additionally, like in addition to comedy, I do the VO stuff as well. So I'm auditioning for like video games and animation and things like that. So I'm not really ruling anything out. Like what I really appreciate about my manager is he supports me in all of the different avenues that I want to explore creatively, and just how to best market those and how to best make it work for my skill set. Um, so it's really hard to talk about it because yeah, it's so nebulous and strange. But I mean, I would love to do all of it. Like I would very much like to see myself as like a Rachel Bloom sort of where I'm starring, creating and producing like a show of a story that I really really care about a great deal.
It seems like your hands are just in everything. Like you're just whatever you can put your fingers or toes or nose or whatever. Like as long as you can like get in there and do it. Like that seems like, what the goal is, I guess, to do your stuff and survive and get it out there and see what lands and see what happens.
Yeah, that's kind of what you have to do out here. I think like I have a sort of like the always say yes, just like yeah, I'll do that, and then you just like figure out how to make it happen, you know.
Hmm.
And most of the time you can. I think time management's hard. Sometimes you take on a little bit too many commitments, and I'm definitely feeling that a little bit right now with some of the shows that I'm working on. But I don't know. I think it's like I just get so much joy out of doing it, and I get so much fulfillment out of knowing that my contributions to the collaborative process are adding value to something. And so I always find that super fulfilling. So yeah, I definitely dabble in a lot of things. I know that sometimes people could be like, I don't really get what the plan is, and in a weird way, there's not necessarily a plan. I think it's just there's a lot of things that excite me and a lot of people that I really enjoy working with. So if they want me on something, I try to find a way to make it happen.
That's awesome. As far as the voiceover work, just out of
Mhm.
curiosity, are you like anything and everything, or are you just trying to get into like a certain area of voice acting?
Predominantly interactive and animation. I've had like commercial auditions, but my interests definitely lie more in like video games and animation, and that's what a lot of my submission stuff is based around.
Okay.
Yeah, it's weird. So with a lot of acting stuff, you don't really get to necessarily pick.
Hmm.
You get breakdowns for things, and you decide whether or not you want to submit for them or not. But if you want to book something, you submit for whatever you can submit for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I remember the first voice actor that I had on. She joked about having to tell her neighbors ahead of time that she was going to be screaming like
Mm.
blood curdling screams for a good 30 minutes
Was it for like a horror
because that.
game?
Yeah, I think
Mhm.
so. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's a good thing to let your neighbors know
Yeah.
that you're not being murdered constantly.
Important. Very, very important.
Well, for people that have listened to this episode, firstly, and they want to check you out if they live in the Los Angeles area, where should they look for you?
So I promote the majority of my stuff that I'm doing on Instagram. It's at Mayanna Berrin. It's just my first and my last name. And then I'm on Twitter at BE Mayanna. I'm not as active on Twitter right now, but I do promote some things on there as well. Those are the two big pieces of social media that I use. So probably Instagram and then Twitter.
Okay, awesome.
Mhm.
I will make sure to have the links to your socials in
Thank
our show
you.
notes and on the Facebook page and website. And I guess that goes for everybody that's out there. If they want to check all just your socials out, I
Mhm.
mean, go for it. But definitely, if you're in the area and you want to go see Mayanna like do her thing, definitely do it. Like
Absolutely.
buy the ticket.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I perform at different theaters. It depends on like what I get asked to do each month. So it's hard to always say like, oh, come see me these dates, because it's still a little nebulous. But I perform predominantly at the Second City, and then usually once a month at the Pack Theater.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
I will make sure to have that in there. And then if there's any updates on stuff going on, I'll make sure to update so that way people know, or at least share it on Twitter and put that out there. Because I know that several people live in that area that hopefully listen to this podcast. Because
Ooh, very
I,
excited.
I see I see people in California downloading, so I know you're out there.
Hey, get them.
All right. Well, man, it is great to catch up with you today, and I'm so happy to have done so and to learn more
Oh,
things.
thank you so much. It was so great catching up with you. I still, yeah, I'm still in disbelief that was 3 years ago. That's crazy.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Tales from the Fandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.